Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 113. Today's guest is Will Blunt from Blogger Sidekick.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin, and you are listening to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people like you and like me who love marketing on the web. You'll be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments where we look at the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what is really working now. The show is brought to you by the book that Toby and I wrote, which is called Web Marketing That Works, and it's a gift for you, our valued listener. That is the 33 free marketing templates from the book, and you can get your hands on those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so today's guest is Will Blunt from Blogger Sidekick, and if you are part of the Blue Wire community, which you are because you're listening to this podcast, then you may already know Will. He's been running our blog for the last 12 or so months, and he has his own business called Blogger Sidekick. He actually was the first person who reviewed our book on Amazon, and he followed all the steps in the book that we'd laid out for reaching out to people and getting on their radar. So we were thrilled to see Will's smiling face at one of our book launch events. And we've hit it off since then. He's proven himself to be an exceptional blogger, exceptional with social media, and we are proud to have him involved with our team. And he's doing a fantastic job with his business, Blogger Sidekick. Some of the high-profile blogs that Will has guest blogged for include HubSpot, John Morrow's Boost blog traffic, Right to Done, and the list will continue to grow because the quality of what Will puts out onto the web is exceptional, and he is an all-round good guy. Just this week, he was featured in Founder magazine as an entrepreneur to keep an eye out for. And with that introduction, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Will Blunt. It's Adam Franklin here, and I am joined on the line by Will Blunt from Blogger Sidekick. Thanks for joining us, Will.
G'day, Adam. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
I've been looking forward to this chat for a while. We've obviously done a bit of work together. I've been following your blog for a while, and my first question is, what drew you into blogging in the first place?
That's an interesting question, Ads. I don't really know where to start with that one. I think from a young age, I was quite a good creative writer, and throughout my years at uni and all that kind of stuff, I went away and did a whole bunch of different things like sales jobs and working in hospitality, and then was still a little bit lost in my mid-20s and not sure what I hadn't found something I was really passionate about. And then I started to do a bit of content marketing for a small management consulting firm here in Sydney, and discovered that, taking complex ideas and packaging them up in some sort of simple manner for people to understand was a bit of a skill of mine. And that kind of led me to pursue a bit of an online world and figure out all this stuff about personal branding and digital marketing and blogging, and started quite, slow and not sure where it would take me, and then just jump on the wave as many people have done in the past. And to be honest, I think, and I'm not trying to piss in your pocket, as they say, but meeting you was probably a real fork in the road for me, or a real tipping point is probably a better way to put it. And blogging for Blue Wire and kind of you taking me on as a colleague and having you there as a mentor really pushed me in the direction of online marketing, and I just kind of immersed myself in it.
Yeah, it's funny how the journey unfolds, because I remember at the start when Tobes and I started, social media didn't exist. Blogging kind of did, but not really. And it's funny how you just sometimes fall into things, but more often just get dragged in one direction that for some reason just holds this appeal, and you just immerse yourself in it and really love it. But I guess So just to bring the listeners up to speed, Will runs Blogger Sidekick, and I will explain this in the intro, but also is the blog manager, editorial manager for the Blue Wire Media blog. And Will was the very first person who wrote an Amazon review for our book, Web Marketing That Works. And it was so interesting because Will turned up at this book launch presentation that I was doing at the Australian Institute of Management and came up and introduced himself. And I'd noticed the night before I'd got this Amazon review from WB 1986, or I think was the Amazon username. And we got chatting, and it was great because you'd kind of followed this outreach process that we'd spoken about a little bit in the book. And it was so nice to connect. And that was a couple of years ago now. And we've been able to find ways to work together and collaborate on things. So that's been really cool. So firstly, thanks for that. But my actual question is, what do you love most about blogging now that you're immersed in it, that you're doing it professionally, and that you're helping real businesses kick goals with their own blog?
It's an interesting one. I think it's certainly it changes a lot what I love most about it. And I think it comes from I always enjoy learning new things. And at the moment, I'm learning a lot about marketing automation and sales funnels, and taking that next level in terms of a business perspective. So that's what really excites me at the moment. I think in the initial stages, it was about discovering what type of content resonated with an audience and all of that kind of stuff. So I think my experience so far has been that the stuff that really energizes me is the things that I'm learning in that time, and I can apply to my business and the online world.
One of the things that happened in our early friendship, I guess, was you wrote a guest blog post for us, and all of a sudden it was our most popular blog post and most shared blog post of all time. And Tobes and I have been blogging since 2008, and then Will comes along, does his first blog post and goes gangbusters. So that automatically got Will on our radar. And what I've admired about your work is that you've got this systematic process for writing blog articles that are almost guaranteed to get traction. And I know there's a process that you go through. So I'm just wanting you to share with us, what is your creative process and what is your methodology for actually creating a good quality blog post?
Yeah, I think, the funny thing is that first one that I wrote for you guys was more luck than good management, that it got social, it got shared a lot, I think. Looking back at it, I was using screenshots that were, until you guided me into the fact that I should use screenshots in the post, I wasn't using any images at all. And then when I did, I used the snipping tool on my Microsoft computer, and it was all pixelated and looked pretty average compared to what I would set my standards at today. But so that certainly wasn't deliberate, but I think overdoing that and getting some results more consistently, the way I think is to try and formulate that in a way so I can replicate success, I guess. And I think for me, it's just about having chunking down. There's a few aspects of it. One aspect is chunking it down into a process. So that actually makes the writing process a whole lot easier because, we all get writer's block and we all have those days where we can't think straight.
Yeah, so hang on just a sec. So this process starts well before you actually start putting pen to paper or finger to keypad, so to speak?
Yeah. So I think, and this will be contextual for everyone, but the way I find the best way to write is to create a process of how you actually go about writing. So, for example, for me, there's aspects of it which are researching content, finding content which is proven to do well, things that have been shared a lot in the past. That would be the first aspect of it, for example. And then the next aspect would be creating a structure. And then the next aspect, for example, in the structure part, headlines, subheadings, dot points, that kind of thing. And then the next aspect would be sitting down and filling that out. And then the final aspect would be, editing and adding images and all of that kind of thing. That's a very simplistic version of the structure and process I use to write, but I think that was the thing that helped me replicate, similar standards and get similar results time after time as that refined. And it was it also helped me do things a lot quicker and a lot better.
So let's talk about some of the tools that you use, because I know we want to take things away that we can actually test out and use. What are some of the tools you use, say, for keyword research, tools for finding out what content's done well in the past, all those types of things that you use?
Yeah, cool. My favorite tool of all the online marketing tools, and it's quite a simplistic one, is BuzzSumo. So BuzzSumo, for those that don't know, it's basically like a search engine like Google, but it ranks content based on social shares. So if you search for, you could search Blue Eye Media, for example, on BuzzSumo, and it would rank all of the content on your website based on how many social shares it had got or it received. So the great thing about BuzzSumo is that's how it initially started. It was just a search engine based on social shares, and it's evolved over time. Now you can really get a lot of valuable information about who has actually shared certain types of content, what types of content have performed the best, who has linked to content. So that's another, I guess, sign of that it's performed well if websites are linking to it. So by going into BuzzSumo and searching for a topic, you'll be able to get a lot of insights into what has performed really well in the past, and that can inform your decision as to, whether or not you should write something about that topic as well.
And so you can also see who has shared it and who's linked to it, can you?
Yeah, I think that may be the pro version, like the paid version. So I'm not 100% sure whether that's available to everyone.
Yeah, I think you might be able to see the social shares, but not the backlinks or something like that, maybe a small snippet of who's been sharing it.
Yeah, it might just give you the first couple or something like that. But, I mean, there are, in terms of if you're just looking for the social sharers, though, you might be right. You could probably get that as a free version. The great thing about that, Ads, and this is something I guess I learned from you a long time ago about reaching out to people, by discovering people that have shared similar content in the past, if you create a post around that, it gives you a reason to connect with those people on Twitter or whatever it is and slowly start building a relationship. And for me, and this is something I've certainly learned from you, and whether or not it's been something you've directly said to me or I've just observed, is to really just value that relationship more than the end goal of a share or whatever it is, because the relationship at the end of the day is where all the value is.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I'd certainly take that philosophy. Okay, so that's BuzzSumo, right? Any other tools that are worth sharing at this stage?
I guess in terms of, not so much in terms of writing the blog content. I think BuzzSumo is great for, finding that type of content that's performed well. I'm a big believer in promoting blog posts as much as spending as much time promoting as you do writing. And I think that's probably the key ingredient, which would help, the consistency of performance and consistency of social shares.
Very good. Yeah, let's talk about promotion. Let's talk about planning it and writing it, which is where most people stop and where I often used to stop, even though I knew better. I knew I should keep promoting it, but I didn't have a good system. Felt like I didn't have the time. So yeah, let's talk about that because I know you're excellent at that.
Well, it's so easy to do ads because every time I'm exactly the same as many other people. When you hit publish, you get that feeling of, I've accomplished something. And then, you don't really think beyond that. You think, because it's often a tedious task to write a post, a lot of people don't worry so much about promotion, which I've found, especially when you're first starting out, people aren't just going to find you without you being a bit of a hustler or a bit deliberate about trying to find other people that will like your content. So the 3-step process I use to promote content, and we've spoken a bit about it already. I actually call it snap, crackle, and pop. It's a bit of a silly metaphor that I came up with when I was trying to write a blog post myself, but basically there's 3 components to it. The snap component is what we just spoke about, so finding a concept which is already proven to perform well. So if you've got a topic which is already proven to perform well, that's the first thing you need to find. The second component, crackle, is about making the content more shareable. So the things you can do to make it more shareable are things like mentioning influencers, people that have big social followings themselves, including lots of images, having an engaging headline, including, click to tweet buttons within a post, which makes it a lot easier for people to share. There's lots of elements I could go into, but probably a bit too tedious for now. So the first 2 components, pick a proven topic, make the content more shareable when you write it. And then the final part, the pop part of the snap, crackle, and pop, is to directly outreach. So all of the people you mentioned when you were writing the content, outreach to them and let them know that you included them in the content. And then all of those people that you saw on BuzzSumo that had shared similar content in the past, reach out to them and let them know that they might, have a liking to your content as well because you've written something substantial.
Are you reaching out to these people on Twitter or via email, or it doesn't matter?
It does matter, I think. It depends on what relationship you've got. If you've got a very superficial relationship where you've probably not spoken to them a lot before and maybe had a couple of tweets, I would say Twitter is the best platform for that. But if you have a more developed relationship, for example, you might have had a conversation like this on a podcast, or you've met them at a conference, or you've had a few email exchanges, or you've been a member of their email list for a little while, something like that, then email would be more appropriate to do that, I think.
I get asked a lot about tools for sharing content, and I'm keen to know your take and your comparison, like pros and cons of, say, Buffer versus Edgar versus Hootsuite. Which do you use? Which do you recommend, and why?
Really good question. I know that you guys use a combination of Buffer and Edgar and CoSchedule, actually. Is that right?
Yeah, we do use CoSchedule. That's right. Yeah, we do.
You didn't mention it, but I'm a big fan of CoSchedule. So CoSchedule is great because it integrates with WordPress and it integrates with your blogging calendar as well. So basically when you publish a post, you can automatically share several social media shares basically straight after you've published the blog, all within the WordPress platform, which is very helpful.
And this can also be for blogs scheduled in the future, right? It's not just for the blog you're hitting publish on now.
Yeah, so within the CoSchedule calendar, you can, for example, if I scheduled a post for next Wednesday, I could pre-schedule all of the social shares following that. And CoSchedule would automatically, do that once it went live, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, cool. And so it also has like this editorial calendar sort of you can visualize your content calendar in there too, can't you? Like you can sort of see we've got all this blog content and social shares mapped out for, say, the rest of the month.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I guess the best way, when I explain it to people, it just looks like a calendar on a wall, or if you've ever used Outlook, it looks a bit like the meeting planner in Outlook. It just kind of maps out you can look at it by week or month or whatever you'd like to, and it really gives you a good visual representation of the content you've got out, not only on your blog, but as you mentioned, on social media as well.
Okay, so that's part of your process. You've written the blog post, you've scheduled it, or you haven't yet, but you're then filling out CoSchedule and, planning out all the tweets and Facebook updates and everything. So that's CoSchedule. And then what about the others, the Buffers or Hootsuites or Edgars?
Yeah, I've used all of them, and I think they all have a bit of a different role. So CoSchedule is great for scheduling social promotion for blog posts specifically. In terms of a lot of your other social activity, if you've got evergreen content, which is content which is still relevant now and will be in 12 or 18 months' time, Edgar is great for that, because Edgar essentially just automates, you create a library full of social updates and then it automates that for the future based on, a schedule that you choose. So Edgar is great for evergreen stuff and, automating a lot of your activity. So it saves you a whole bunch of time. Buffer and Hootsuite, I think, are probably similar in the way I use them. I'm sure they've got different functionalities within them, but there, I guess, for example, if I was on a blog and I wanted to share something immediately, like the page I was reading immediately, Buffer and Hootsuite, are very good for that, because they have Chrome plugins where you can just, click a button and it essentially shares it to the social networks you choose really quickly. But I guess Buffer and Hootsuite they offer a bit of both worlds, but they don't, for me, they're not the best alternatives. I'd prefer a combination of Edgar and CoSchedule. What do you think?
Look, I'm with you. I think I love Buffer, but I love Edgar I love it more because it recycles through the content, whereas Buffer, you've got to fill your queues up or fill your libraries up with content. It won't just sort of start again at the top, which I just love with Edgar, because you can set and forget the automation part, but then it frees you up to do the interacting with people. And that's the most important part of the social media, once you've got the distribution taken care of, is actually being free enough to reply to tweets, reply to Facebook comments and everything else. So that's what I love about it, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to agree with you. And it was one of those moments with Edgar, I think you might have referred me onto it actually, but it was one of those moments where I was trying to come up with this solution to use Buffer in the same way as Edgar, by creating a huge spreadsheet full of content that I could every week go and schedule in for the week following. And then I stumbled across Edgar, and it was kind of like it answered all those things for me.
Yeah, totally. So where's your head at in terms of Google Plus or Twitter? Which do you like better and why?
Yeah, so, well, Google Plus to me has, it was one of the social networks I focused on because it integrated with everything really well and you could share, longer content and it was very visual and I liked it. But it seems to be on a bit of a spiral out of control. It's a bit of a ghost town a lot of the time, and I feel like the engagement you get is a little bit superficial now compared to what it used to be. And I guess I like to see what, people that I respect and have influence do. And there's quite a few of those big social influencers that have moved away from Google Plus now. So I feel like it's, slowly going to be on the way out. What do you think about G Plus from that respect?
I'm not as active on it anymore. I certainly feel the same that it wouldn't be where I focus my attention.
Yeah.
How would you then compare that to, say, just how noisy and busy Twitter is?
Yeah.
Is it too busy? One's a ghost town and one's you're drinking out of a fire hose, or is there a better way to be using Twitter?
Yeah, that's probably a great metaphor to use, Ad. It depends how you use Twitter. I think if you're using Twitter to kind of get a stream of content to see from other people, it's quite a challenge because, as you said, it's like a fire hose. There's so much going on. But if you're using Twitter as a way to, to be honest, I think the biggest benefit of Twitter is actually connecting with people. And it's a great first place to make that initial connection without it being too confronting. So you can easily send someone a tweet from, the person that you may perceive has the smallest job in the world to the President of the United States. You can send a tweet to anyone and a lot of people, surprisingly, will reply to you. For example, people like Michael Hyatt and people of his caliber and standing in the marketing and online industry have replied to my tweets, 12 to 18 months ago before I had almost any Twitter followers. So that's an example of how you can connect to almost anyone in the world with such ease. And many, initial connections on Twitter can result in much, much stronger relationships in other parts of life. So, yeah, I think that's the real value for Twitter for me. It's not so much the finding content. It's more amplifying your own content and connecting with people.
Interesting. I do find that as well, actually, because whether it's a great opportunity, I find, to interact with readers. So if people do click, say, like a click to tweet link and shares one of our templates or blog articles or podcasts, for example, it gives me an opportunity to go in and say thank you and see what they're up to and sort of look at their bio and see where they're from or what they're up to. And again, I think, as you say, if there are people you want to get on, whose radar you want to get on, it's a pretty neat way, isn't it? To just have something in your phone and then say in an influencer's phone or a real high-profile Richard Branson, President of the United States sort of thing, to actually just be able to tweet them directly and, it'll go to them. It's amazing, to think 5 or 10 years ago when Twitter didn't exist, it would have been unheard of. But now you can actually use it and form genuine relationships. And I think most of the people that I've forged relationships with over the years, particularly, with the book coming out a few years back, but in that lead-up time, Twitter was always, as you say, the first port of call because you could, it'd be like a giant cocktail party. And I know that's a well-used analogy, but you can literally just go up and talk to anybody, but it's then, of course, what you do, what you say, and how you follow up and everything else that matters a whole lot as well. But it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask you a question now because this is something that came across my radar this week. So have you noticed with Twitter, what they did is they changed their API rights. I think it was this week. I don't even know what an API is, but I'm using the terminology anyway. So on websites and blogs and stuff now, what it used to be like if you had a social sharing plugin is it would show how many tweets or that people had shared for that piece of content. So, for example, on your blog, it would show, 100 Facebook likes, 100 tweets or whatever it was and all of that stuff for the social media. So Twitter changed their API. So now it doesn't show how many tweets have been shared for that piece of content. So if you go onto a website now, for example, Jeff Bullis's site, which has, typically 1,800 to 2,000 social shares per blog post, it will now look like 200 or 300 shares. Unless you dive deeper and go into a tool like BuzzSumo, which actually shows the real amount of social shares. So Twitter actually removed that ability for third-party applications that are the social sharing plugins to show how many tweets there had been on a post.
Is that right? I'm just looking at it now. So basically, like the Twitter button now doesn't have that little tally, that counter thing next to it.
Yeah, there's no counter. So basically, I use Twitter as my probably main platform for promoting content, and it's a huge piece of social proof on your blog to have a big share count on posts. So I think it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers in the social media and marketing industry. What do you think?
Yeah, I reckon so. Because you say, people like to get lots of tweets for the social proof. But my question also is, if, say, I tweeted my own post 20 times, will that count as 20 tweets or just the one in the old days?
I think it depends on your plugin, but yeah, I think it would count as 20.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's going to be interesting. It's a tough balance, between getting stuff shared purely for the social proof versus focusing on having a good piece of content that is sort of worthy of getting shared in the first place. I don't know. It will be interesting. I'll give it some more thought. It's normally the easiest one to get shares on as well, compared to LinkedIn or maybe not always, but I certainly
it depends on the type of content. But yeah, I think it is generally a bit easier. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's two aspects to it. For example, you could look at it from the aspect of, but you want more people to engage with the content. It's not about how many shares there are, and you want people to be actually reading and, getting value from the content. There is that aspect. But the other aspect is that it's human nature. If there's a lot of shares on a post, people are more likely to share that, which actually gets it in front of more people and amplifies the influence and amount of people you can actually help. So I don't know. I guess there's both sides of it.
Yeah, it's like the big queue outside of a restaurant. You kind of just want to see what it's all about purely because it's popular, and often it's self-fulfilling prophecy. It is popular, and then you say nicer things about it and you check it out. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Anyway, sorry, I took you off track.
No, that's all good. I like that. I hadn't even noticed yet that Twitter thing had changed. And for the record, API, I discovered I remember from Blue Wire's web design days, application programming interface. And I've just Googled it just to make sure I'm not telling fibs, and it's application programming interface, so that the techies listening, we know what we're on about here. And what an API is normally just anyway, I'm not even going to try and describe what an API is, but I Googled it and I was right. So anyway, the next part I want to talk to you about is your success with guest blogging. Now, I know you've written for all sorts of blogs like Boost Blog Traffic, Right to Done, Jeff Bullis, HubSpot. There's a huge list. I know there's many, many more that you've written for. I know it's often written about as a very effective strategy for building visibility and getting backlinks and getting traffic, but it's a lot of hard work as well. And I've certainly dabbled in it, and I've written for a few blogs here and there. But you seem to have this natural ability to do it. So I guess the first question is, before you even start writing, how much in advance do you sort of work on the relationships with the actual blogger themselves?
Yeah, and I think that's where I would start. It depends on the platform. So if you're going to blog on, an individual's blog, for example, like Boost Blog Traffic is John Morrow's blog, or Jeff Bullis's blog, or Right to Done is Mary Juck's, I think the personal relationship is a little bit more important with ones like that compared to if it's a HubSpot or a Marketing Land or one of those, or Social Media Examiner, which, are more brands which have large amounts of guest blogs come through. With the big sites, the big, brands, usually there's a pretty step-by-step process that they can take you through to become a guest blogger. Whereas with, the individual bloggers, it's a little bit more personalized and the relationship is a bit more important. So I guess like you would establish any relationship, I would just start by reading their blog, signing up to their email list, sharing their content on social media, perhaps commenting on some of their posts and getting a little bit of visibility in their world would be a great starting point. And then just finding, a way to add value. So obviously by commenting and sharing, that's a way of adding value to their site and their goals. But you can also find other ways to do so. For example, when I first met you, Ads, reading your book and reviewing it on Amazon was something which was quite beneficial to you guys in the early days. So that was a good deposit, I guess we would call it, to get on your radar and start that relationship. So, you won't be able to find, though, not everyone has written a book, but there's always ways that you can think about helping someone else out generously enough times so that when you ask to potentially guest blog for their site, it doesn't feel like a big ask. And a lot of the time, they'll ask you before you need to ask if you do develop the relationship right anyway.
That's a good point, actually. So assuming someone doesn't ask you, though, like you've obviously done some asks in your time, that's a scary part for me and others, I'm sure. You've put a few deposits in the relationship, you feel you've got something to offer. How do you sort of frame it, and how do you make sure that it's, valuable to them in the first place?
Well, I guess there's a couple of ways to look at it. I've been shut down plenty of times as well before, and I guess you learn from those experiences. But
have you? Yeah, me too.
I think
temporarily shut down. I think we'll write for them one day, but at the moment they're too busy, or there's other things on their plate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I first wrote for Boost Blog Traffic, their managing editor there his name's Glenn Long. He's a really nice guy. Now we're on like very good terms and have a very good relationship. But initially, I read their contributors page or their Write For Us page and quickly disregarded pretty much all of the advice they gave and tried to send a fully written blog post straight into Glenn to try and get featured on their blog. And he kindly wrote back saying, "We'd be more than happy to accept a guest contribution for you, but we'd appreciate if you read the guidelines and went through the process." Mm-hmm. So I think that was a real learning for me, not to get too far ahead of yourself. So respect that they have these processes there for a reason. And most sites do have, a contributors section where they give you some advice on what they are looking for. HubSpot's an example who have a very specific process to go through. And if you don't automatically have a warm lead with someone, the best way to do it is to follow their process, I think, and just be patient and just be thoughtful about the way you approach it. Most of the time, a good way to approach it is to say, I've been reading your blog for a while and I really like the style. I think that I could contribute and add value to your audience. Here's a few examples of where I've done that in the past. How would you like me to send through, a few topics or post examples, which I think would, add to your audience or add to your current content or something along the lines of that. And that's usually a good way to approach it, I found.
Yes, well, it's obviously got you some good results. And then you've also published to your own blog, which is called Blogger Sidekick. What's your ratio at the moment, do you reckon, between blogs on your home turf versus blogs you do out on other people's blogs?
It's an interesting question for this very moment because I've kind of taken a back seat on content creation over the last couple of months. And there was a real reason for that is because my real aspiration is to grow a business, and I wanted to set up the business before focusing too much on generating a lot of traffic, I guess, was my thought. So that's why I took a back seat on content creation and we'll refocus on that in the new year. But if all of that was, set up and in an ideal world, I think I would almost do a 50-50 split, or perhaps even lean towards the more guest blogging than content on my own site. For me, I write very long posts on my site, very resourceful posts. The goal being I want them to be the definitive piece of content on whatever topic I'm writing about. So I would do that, for example, once a month and focus a lot on promoting that content. And then if I had the time and capacity, spend the rest of the time in terms of content creation on guest blogging and driving traffic back to my site, because I've really found that to be, without paying for it, leveraging someone else's audience is easily the best tactic that I have used. Yeah, rather than trying to wait forever for it to come to you.
Yeah, it can be a long, lonely waiting for people to turn up at your blog if you don't have a active guest blogging and promotion strategy, hey?
Yeah. It can be quite disheartening at times.
Totally disheartening. That's one of the things that I was on the verge of giving up blogging because I just thought, man, no one's actually even reading this stuff. And I syndicated it, my exact same article with Business to Community, which is one I noticed Jeff Bullis had been syndicating his content with. So I checked with Jeff, is this legit? Are they publishing it with consent? And he said, yep, it's great. So he introduced me to their team, and I said, would you consider syndicating my content? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll give that a go. And anyway, first blog post, like exactly the same thing that was written on the Blue Wire blog back in the day, had like 7 tweets. I think I had 7 people working for us at the time. And then put it on businesstocommunity.com. And it had over 100 tweets. And I just went, man, this is a different game. Like the same content. It wasn't the content that was suffering. It was just I was in a ghost town. No one knew about me and knew about the blog. So it was quite eye-opening to realize that your content can actually get traction if you put it in front of people and go to a busy hub online.
Definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people might quickly assume that perhaps their content's not good enough, or they're doing something wrong from that perspective. But a lot of the time, it's just not in front of the right people.
Yeah, that was a huge realization for me. So, Matt, you've got a couple of free downloads that people can get their hands on. What are some of the pieces of content that you've got available for interested listeners?
We'll actually put together a page specifically for the podcast. So if people want to check out bloggersidekick.com/bluewire, they'll find a bundle which I put together with the Blogger Sidekick most successful downloads. It speaks about the writing process we spoke about today, as well as there's a checklist, for writing quality content. And there's one other thing in there which I can't remember right now, but yeah, it's a couple of the most downloaded. I've taken a similar strategy to you guys, and in creating, a number of different templates and checklists and downloads to try and help people with specific problems to grow my email list. So yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I'll include a link to that, but it was bloggersidekick.com/bluewire. If you're out running or driving in your car or whatever, then make a note of that and go over and download all of Will's resources. Now, Will, is there any final comments or anything else you want to get off your chest before we bring this interview to a close?
Not really. I think, no, it's been really enjoyable. Thanks so much for having me on, Adam. And I hope that it's been helpful in terms of blogging and getting people found online. So I really enjoyed it, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, mate. I'm always interested in asking you these questions, and I'm pleased that I could ask more, and I'm pleased that we could record it and share it with the listeners on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you happen to be listening to it right now. And any other ways people can connect with you, like your website or Twitter?
Yeah, so on my website, obviously they can connect. We've got all the social stuff up there. Otherwise, @bloggersidekick is the Twitter handle. My personal Twitter handle is @WillBluntAU.
Awesome. All right, mate. Well, hopefully lots of listeners will connect via Twitter. Feels very friendly and responsive on that platform. So I encourage you to reach out and say hello. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thanks, Will.
Perfect. Thanks.
And that is a wrap for my interview with Will Blunt from Blogger Sidekick. I really thought that snap, crackle, and pop framework that Will talked about was really neat. The snap part being, is it popular? The crackle part being, is it shareable? I really thought the snap, crackle, and pop framework was really neat. The snap being, is it popular? The crackle being, is it shareable? And the pop being, can we get it out to influencers? So a lot there that we learnt from Will, getting into the nuts and bolts of some of the social media sharing platforms, the Edgars versus Hootsuite versus Buffer versus Co-Schedule or Co-Schedule, depending on how you say it. But all in all, Will is a super blogger. He's doing some great work with Blue Wire and actually working with a bunch of other marketing blogs around the internet. So if you do fit the bill of being a marketing blogger or an agency with a blog and you need an extra set of hands to get that consistency and to tie it all together and to relieve some of that pressure off you as the primary blogger, then Will Blunt could well be a good option for you. I'm sure he's very nearly at full capacity, so you probably will need to move quickly, but we can't recommend him highly enough. And if you haven't done so already, I do suggest that you head over to Will's website and download his bundle of goodies. Now the URL for that again is bloggersidekick.com/bluewire. I'm just looking at it now. All sorts of goodness there. All of his blog post checklists, blog post writing templates, his shake and bake writing process. So head on over there and get your hands on all of those. So to recap, this show was brought to you by Web Marketing That Works, the book that Toby and I wrote. And there's a gift for you as well, and that is the 33 free marketing templates that go with the book. You can get your hands on those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. So I hope you found this show useful. I always welcome your feedback. Just drop me a line to say hello. drop me a line to offer some feedback or some questions, you can always reach me, adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au, or send me a tweet at Franklin_Adam. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, it would be very much appreciated if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud, as it means a lot to us and it helps us a lot. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Bye.